Okay, this is Mr. Reed coming at you live. Today I'm going to briefly talk about global issues and how that is applicable to our particular course as we are studying global issues and global citizenship and moving in the direction of looking at how we approach text in different means or different readings of a text and how we can connect those readings to global issues. So today we're going to talk about how to specify a global issue, and this is coming directly from the 2020-21 IBO report. And it makes the argument that specific and original global issues lead to students being able to draw on stronger persuasive interpretations of the text. So really diving, once you have kind of a general idea about what a global issue is, so for example, like poverty or climate change, those tend to be very broad issues. And within that, you can find usually far more specific interpretations of that issue. So, case in point, how gender stereotypes are shaped by political institutions, right? Or immigrants' dreams of a better life, or taboo and its impact on the individual, or violence as a form of justice. These are all very not super specific global issues, but they tend to involve groups of people and how they are being impacted on a global scale and some of the implications of that, right? So, like, again, it could be groups, that could be communities. But again, we're trying to find ways to narrow the focus without being so overly specific that you sort of pigeonhole yourself. So let's look at a couple other examples. Another key point to mention of a characteristic, aside from what I just mentioned, there are three things that the IB lists out. The first one is that it needs to have a significance on a wide, large scale. So think of that really as like the global issue. Transnational, which means that you see this from border to border. Yeah, it might look a little bit different from country to country, but there is some patterns, there are some commonalities that you can draw from. And then also you can feel this in a local context, right? So you can think about some of the issues that exist within the Philippines, for example. And obviously, again, like they stem in a much wider context, but how do you see, experience, feel, or know people who have been impacted by a particular issue or issues? So let's take a look at an example here. So again, narrow your focus. A way too broad issue is war, right? What about war? In what context are you talking about war? Who is being affected by war? And when you talk about war, what type of war are you talking about, right? So you see how too broad that is. So now we can narrow it down a little bit more specifically, looking at violence as a form of justice. It's broad enough that there's enough that you could fill in the blank with, but however, I feel like there's enough here that it's specific enough. There is a cause and an effect here. Too specific would then be gas chambers as torture methods, right? That's like just a very specific type of torture method. So we'd stick with violence in that case. Another example here, gender inequality. This is a very common issue that some students fall into. Yeah, of course, this is a global issue, but what about gender inequality makes it an issue, right? And then you start looking at it, you think about like, my God, my goodness, there's so many different things you could talk about within this wider concept. So a more specific example of this would be the diminishment of female power by unrealistic beauty standards. Again, like not super broad, but there's clearly a focus. Again, there's a causation, there's a cause, and there's an effect here. And then too specific, again, where you're pigeonholing yourself as beauty standards and Miss Universe beauty pageants. That's like way too specific. So again, the diminishment of female power by unrealistic beauty standards takes sort of the cake here. I wanted to share out, lastly, just an example of, or examples of students who, grade 12 students who completed their individual oral last semester. These were some very strong examples of global issues. And again, because they were able to narrow the focus just enough, and again, thinking about context and thinking about certain communities and how the issue impacts them, they were able to really articulate and give a pretty strong persuasive argument. So that is global issues. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.